North Korea fired a ballistic missile into the East Sea this morning, already the 8th this year and seen as a further provocation against ongoing joint drills between South Korea and the U.S. Rising food prices, in particular the cost of eating out, continue to put a bite in consumers' wallets here in the country. The government is set to roll out plans to boost domestic consumption. Ukraine says Russia's plan to station nuclear weapons in Belarus makes the country a nuclear hostage. The U.S., however, sees no signs that will make Washington change its strategic deterrent posture. Our top story this morning, North Korea has fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles toward the East Sea around an hour ago, widely seen as yet another act of protest against military drills between Seoul and Washington. This Sangyong amphibious landing exercise between the allies will continue until April 3rd, and the American top-class aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz, is also set to arrive in Busan on Tuesday in a show of naval might and the two allies' commitment to peace. We'll bring you more details on the regime's missile launch in our later newscast. Rising food prices, in particular the cost of eating out, continue to put a bite in consumers' wallets here in the country. The government is set to roll out sales events and discount measures while keeping inflation under control. Our Lee Kyung-eun has the details.
These days, there's only so much you buy at a restaurant with 10,000 Korean won or roughly $8. In the South Korean capital, Seoul, that's not enough for a portion of the cold noodle dish, naengmyeon or bibimbap, the prices of which rose once again last month after already exceeded 10,000 won in January. The prices of groceries like ice cream, snacks, and bottled water, as well as deliveries, all soared. This comes as the restaurant price index in February, according to Statistics Korea released on Sunday, surged by 7.5% on year. It's much moderate figure compared to the 30-year high of 9% recorded last September. Despite remaining higher compared to last year, the index since then has been declining monthly thanks to tiny monetary policies to tame inflation. But the February figure raises concerns over price pressures once again, as it is unchanged from January, ending the recent slowdown trend. And that's not just a problem for consumers, as slumping domestic consumption deals a blow to local businesses and the domestic economy as a whole. With dwindling consumption coming with slumping exports, the two major pillars of the domestic economy, the South Korean government is planning to roll out a set of plans to boost spending as early as this week. They would include a large-scale sales festa and the onnuri gift certificates that could be used in traditional markets and discount coupons for groceries. But authorities say the measures will put in place only to an extent where don't trigger price surges through increased demand. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
The wildfire that broke out on Manisan Mountain in Gangwon County in Incheon has been fully extinguished as of 8 a.m. this morning after 17 hours. 900 firefighters were present at the scene of the wildfire, which burned up an area equivalent to over 40 football fields. No casualties or damage to facilities were reported overnight, but 8 villagers were evacuated to a nearby village hall. The fire, which broke out at around 2:44 p.m. Sunday, fortunately did not spread to the Jeongsusa Temple, which is a national treasure number 161 in Korea. Ukraine says Russia's plan to station nuclear weapons in Belarus makes the country a nuclear hostage. The U.S., however, sees no signs that will make Washington change its strategic deterrent posture. Our Lee Seung-ja has more.
According to the head of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, Alexei Danilov, in a tweet on Sunday, Russia has made a nuclear hostage out of Belarus and taken a step towards the internal destabilization of the country. This comes after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the moving of tactical nuclear weapons into Belarus. Danilov also said the move maximizes the level of negative perception and public rejection of Russia and Putin in Belarusian society. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry also criticized the Kremlin's decision, calling on Belarus to prevent the deployment of nuclear weapons in the country, which it said would be in violation of its obligations under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. It added that such a move will further turn Belarus into a hostage of the Kremlin and have catastrophic consequences for its future. However, Putin argues that the U.S. has placed nuclear weapons in a number of countries and that what Russia is doing is nothing different. He also said that Moscow has also handed over the Iskander missile systems to Belarus, which can be used to launch nuclear weapons. Russia plans to complete the construction of a special storage facility for tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus by July 1st and begin training crew next week. But when it comes to actual nuclear weapons, Washington says there's no indication that Russia has moved weapons into Belarus just yet. And according to National Security Council spokesman John Kirby on Sunday, there are no signs that Putin is actually planning to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine.
I can tell you that we've seen nothing that would indicate Mr. Putin is preparing to use tactical nuclear weapons in any way whatsoever in Ukraine. And I can also tell you that we haven't seen anything that would cause us to change our own strategic nuclear deterrent posture.
He added that the U.S. monitors the situation on a daily basis and has seen no signs that would have Washington change its strategic deterrence posture. However, some experts say that Moscow may be preparing the use of tactical nuclear weapons against Ukraine, as opposed to strategic high-powered, long-range nuclear weapons. 이승재, Arirang News.
Following his arrest in Montenegro last week, cryptofugitive Do Kwon is planning to appeal against a decision by a court in Montenegro to extend his detention by up to 30 days. Our Jinhae Lee has the latest.
Following the arrest of Terraform Labs co-founder Do Kwon in Montenegro last Thursday for allegedly traveling with falsified documents, the Montenegrin prosecutor's office made an application to the court to extend Kwon's detention before the 72-hour detention period expired. The court ordered that Kwon can be detained for up to a further 30 days. Local media sources say the extension was granted as the court considered Kwon a flight risk due to him being a foreign national whose identity could not clearly be confirmed. In response to the order, Kwon's lawyer filed an appeal against the decision, claiming that he had been deprived of the right to defend himself as current interpretation had not been provided. Do Kwon is now expected to first face trial in Montenegro rather than in South Korea or the United States, where he is wanted for fraud related to the multi-billion-dollar collapse of two digital currencies last year. And with his detention extended, as well as his appeal, it's even less clear whether Kwon will be extradited to South Korea to face charges. Meanwhile, after Kwon was charged with fraud by U.S. prosecutors, foreign media outlets put Kwon and the crash of the Terra stablecoin and its sister coin Luna in 2022 under the spotlight. AFP described Kwon as a disgraced fugitive, reporting that experts had long pointed out Kwon's model was fundamentally flawed, with some outright calling it a Ponzi scheme. The Washington Post also covered Kwon's story with an analysis of how he became a fugitive. 신하영, Arirang News.
Senior police officer Woo Jong-soo is set to become chief of the National Police of Investigation following his recommendation to the president from South Korea's police agency. Woo, who is the current Commissioner General of the Gyeonggi Nambu Provincial Police, is expected to have his new role confirmed by President Yoon Suk-yeol on Monday. He has served in key positions in the police agency since 1999, including as Yongsan Police Station Chief and Investigation Bureau Chief of the Seoul Metropolitan Police. The president's initial pick for the position, Chung Sun-shin, had withdrawn from taking the post before his term started last month. It was revealed that his son was penalized for bullying a classmate, and Jung had reportedly used his legal expertise to negate the disciplinary action. South Koreans have a tendency to be more generous when it comes to consuming alcohol, especially after work or along with lunch and over the weekend. And it's widely believed a glass of wine, beer, or soju on the dinner table does no harm. But does it really? According to a recent study, it doesn't. For more, let's turn to Dr. Elise Chan from Ms. Mary Women's Hospital. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Like I said, according to a recent data released by Korea's National Cancer Center, even a small amount of beer can cause cancer. I mean, how can beer lead to such a serious illness?
That's a great question. I think your question points to some misunderstandings about alcohol. So first of all alcoholic beverages contain ethanol, which is a group 1 carcinogen. In other words, it's in the same category as smoking tobacco cigarettes, which is well known to cause cancer. And so this is one misunderstanding I think that your question points to. And the other misunderstanding is that only hard liquor causes cancer, but that's not true. As I said, all alcoholic beverages contain ethanol, and ethanol is a group 1 carcinogen, which increases your risk of cancer. So yes, even wine and beer, these are drinks that contain less alcohol per volume, they can increase your risk of cancer.
But doctor, it's widely believed that a glass of wine, red wine especially, can reduce a person's risk of heart disease and even diabetes, I've heard. Are we still mistaken?
Yes, unfortunately, there was an older study that did seem to suggest a cardioprotective effect of alcohol, but a more recent analysis of the data that was conducted by a group of scientists from Canada, the US, and also Australia showed that even small amounts of drinking can increase the risk of dying of heart disease. And what they found was, in the previous study, there was something called a healthy survivor bias. In other words, the older people who were included in the study were more likely to be healthy, but they didn't correct for this bias. And so that's why it seemed to suggest that there was a cardioprotective effect. And this was found to be not true. And also in terms of diabetes, it's a little bit more complicated, but it is known that excess alcohol intake can increase your risk of developing type 2 diabetes.
So far you've crossed out beer, red wine, I'm sure white wine as well, but there's a wide range of alcohol. What about makgeolli, known as Korean raw rice wine? It's made of rice and has a low alcohol content compared to wine and soju. Is it still bad?
Right. So you're asking a great question, and I'm sure a lot of people are asking the same question in their minds. But as I mentioned, even drinks with low alcohol content, such as wine, makgeolli, they all contain alcohol, which is ethanol. Ethanol is a known carcinogen. Also, when alcohol is ingested, it's broken down into a substance called acetaldehyde. And this is a substance which is known to damage the DNA of our cells, which is toxic to our body. So yes, unfortunately, even makgeolli can increase your risk of cancer. And also, if you consider the serving size of makgeolli, it's actually served traditionally in a bowl, not a cup. And
right.
So when you drink one serving of makgeolli, it actually ends up being the same amount of volume of alcohol as one shot of soju.
Right. Then, before we let you go, what advice do you have in terms of managing alcohol consumption, especially as at times drinking is inevitable?
Right, and I think you're getting to the heart of the question and the problem of drinking in Korea, which is the pervasive drinking culture and the attitude that drinking is inevitable in some social situations, and drinking should never be inevitable. And so we need the leadership of all organizations across all stratospheres of society in South Korea to encourage a more healthy alternative to drinking for relieving stress, for team building, and for having fun. There's so many other ways, healthier alternatives that we can achieve these goals. But if you are going to drink. Please do not drink on an empty stomach and limit the amount of alcohol that you're going to take. For women, it should be no more than 1 glass. For men, also no more than 2 glasses of an alcoholic beverage. But abstaining from alcohol is the best option. And if you can partner with some friends, coworkers, or fellow students to engage in this healthier lifestyle, that might be a better alternative, and there's strength in numbers.
Right, everything in moderation.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Tan, thank you so much for your insight this morning.
Thank you.
The weather has surely warmed up here in South Korea, meaning flowers have made a welcome springtime return, including the ones at the country's biggest cherry blossom festival. Our Song Yoo-jin takes us to Jinhae Gunhangjae.
Cherry blossoms spring to life. One of the best ways to enjoy this epic springtime scenery is by visiting the annual Jinhae Gunhangjae Festival taking place in the Jinhae district in Gyeongsangnam-do province. The country's biggest cherry blossom festival is back in full swing for the first time in 4 years due to COVID-19. Though flowers are not in full bloom yet, this gorgeous sea of white and pink, made up by some 360,000 king cherry trees, draws an endless crowd. People here are taking photographs and just enjoying themselves under these cherry blossom trees. Because this is the first cherry blossom season without any virus restrictions, the festival forecasts an all-time high of 4.5 million visitors to visit, both from near and far.
I decided to take a look around first because I expect not only local residents, but lots of people from all across the country to come. I want to guide them when they visit.
It's our dream to see the cherry blossom, the Sakura festival, since we are little. We got engaged and married last year, so this is part of our honeymoon.
Well, since we just got here, we cannot wait to take pictures and enjoy the...
But it's just the beginning of the flower party. Flowers start bursting and reaching peak bloom from the south of the country.
Spring flowers this year, including forsythias, cherry blossoms, and azaleas, are blooming 5 to 10 days earlier than last year. This is due to higher than usual temperatures, levels we've seen in mid to late April the year before.
This means peak bloom, which is when 80% of the flowers are open, will happen much earlier this year. As for here in Jinhae, last year, flowers reached their peak on March 31st, so the local weather station predicts peak bloom to be earlier than that this year, sometime before April 3rd, when the Gunhangjae Festival comes to an end. So if you want to have some cherry blossom fun this year, it'll be a good idea to start planning now. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News, Jinhae.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley joining us here in the studio. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Dami.
Let's start in the U.S., where President Joe Biden has declared a state of emergency following a deadly tornado that tore through 2 states.
Well, that's right. Making the announcement on Sunday local time, the state of emergency will allow Mississippi and Alabama to receive federal assistance after the tornado wreaked havoc on Friday night. Now, according to reports, at least 26 people were killed in the storms, with 25 of the dead in Mississippi. Hundreds of buildings in both states were damaged, while the town of Rolling Fork, Mississippi, was completely flattened along the 274-kilometer-long path of destruction. Now, rescue operations are underway to locate those still missing. The tornado was rated EF-4 on the scale to measure the intensity of such storms. It's the second highest rating possible. Meanwhile, in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has fired his defense minister after he urged the PM to pause controversial plans for judicial reform, which would limit the powers of the courts. Now, the sacking of Yoav Gallant was announced on Sunday, and it came just 1 day after the defense minister said that moving ahead with the judicial reform would threaten the country's national security. Galant's statement followed pledges by some military reservists to halt their national service in opposition to the change. It also comes amid weeks of protests by hundreds of thousands of people. The judicial reform, if passed, would allow the Israeli parliament to overrule Supreme Court decisions, and that with a simple majority. It would also allow the government to nominate judges and remove the court's ability to determine government appointments unreasonable. Turning to the United Nations now, as the international body has made almost 700 commitments to water conservation and providing clean, universal access to it. The non-binding pledges come as part of the Water Action Agenda. They were adopted at the UN 2023 Water Conference at the UN headquarters in New York, which closed on Friday after a 3-day session. Among the hundreds of commitments was the creation of a UN envoy for water and a scientific panel. It was the first global water conference in almost 50 years and was attended by around 2,000 people, including government representatives, scientists and academics. Now, despite the progress, some experts are concerned that the non-binding nature of the pledges will do little to help. And finally, Hollywood actor Jonathan Majors has been released from police custody after being arrested on charges of assault, strangulation and harassment. According to reports, Majors was taken into custody in New York City on Saturday local time after a 30-year-old woman made a 911 call and alleged that he had assaulted her. He was charged, then released a few hours later. Now, an attorney for the actor has since said that there is evidence proving his innocence, including footage from the scene where the alleged assault took place, and that the accuser has recanted her story. The 33-year-old actor is known for his recent appearance in Creed 3, as well as Marvel projects, including Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and Loki.
Good morning. The cherry blossoms bloomed 14 days earlier than usual on Saturday here in Seoul, the second earliest on record since 1922. Then we are waking up to a chilly morning with a cold wave advisory issued in some inland areas. Daegwallyeong and Chuncheon are waking up to a sub-zero temperatures this morning. But along with sunshine, highs will rise fast to the mid-teens in most parts, easily surpassing temperature gaps of 15 degrees between lows and highs across Korea. And due to big fluctuations in temperatures, many are coming down with a cold these days, so take care of yourselves. Clean air is welcomed by all of us under sunny skies, with a dry weather advisory remaining in place in the capital, west of Gangwon-do and parts of Chungcheong-Pukdo provinces. Meanwhile, Busan sees a high of 17 degrees, Jeju at 13 degrees this afternoon. Now, this round of spring cold is short-lived with a gradual rise in temperatures, and the last week of March looks quite promising under sunny spells. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. Do stay with us for more updates throughout the day. Thanks for watching.